The little girl was still coughing when the landlord snapped the deadbolt behind them. Marcus Reed had exactly $20 in his wallet, an almost empty inhaler in his daughter's coat pocket, and 15 minutes before the pharmacy closed. Then a soaked woman stumbled into the bus shelter, looked straight at him, and said, "Please, if I don't get downtown tonight, they're going to take my son away from me." If stories like this hit somewhere deep, subscribe, like the video, and tell me where you're watching from before we begin. Because this one doesn't just stay with you, it changes you. Rain hammered the plexiglass roof so hard it sounded like someone throwing gravel. Lily pressed herself against Marcus's side, shivering in her school uniform under a coat that had become too short at the wrists. She was 8, all big eyes and quiet questions, the kind of child who noticed when adults lied and loved them anyway. Her breath rattled when she inhaled. Marcus looked at the woman. Her hair was stuck to her face. Her mascara had run. One heel was broken clean off. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't high. She looked like somebody whose life had cracked open an hour ago and was still splitting. "Please," she said again. "My purse is gone. My phone died. I just need cash for a cab. $20. I can bring it back, I swear." A man at the far end of the bench muttered, "Yeah, right." The woman ignored him. Her eyes stayed on Marcus. Not because he looked rich. He looked exhausted. But maybe because exhausted people recognize desperation faster than anyone. Marcus touched the folded bill in his pocket. It was for Lily's inhaler refill and a can of soup. Lily looked up at him. She already knew. "Dad," she whispered, so softly only he could hear. "That's all we have." He swallowed. "What happens if you don't get there?" he asked the woman. Her mouth trembled, but when she spoke, her voice came out raw and honest. "My son's garage. They're signing papers to sell it tonight. It's the last thing he built before he died. If I don't get there before the board votes, it's gone." Something in Marcus's face changed. Not because he knew her, because he knew that sentence. The last thing he left. He had said almost the exact same words in a hospital hallway 2 years earlier, clutching Lily while a nurse explained that Tessa's wedding ring was in a plastic bag with her things. People had walked past him then, too. Not cruelly, just quickly. The way people do when pain belongs to somebody else. Marcus pulled the 20 from his pocket. The woman stared at it like it burned. "No," Lily whispered, and that one word hit him harder than anything. He crouched in front of her. Rain blew in through the side of the shelter and spotted his shirt. "I know, Bug." "But my medicine." His jaw tightened. "I know." She searched his face, trying to figure out whether grown-ups were brave or just bad at math. "Are we still getting it?" Marcus held her gaze for one terrible second too long. "Not tonight." The woman stepped back. "I can't take that from a child." Marcus stood and pushed the money into her hand anyway. "Then don't take it from her," he said. "Take it from me." Her fingers closed around the bill. She looked like she might break. "Why would you do that?" He gave a dry, humorless laugh. "Because someday Lily might be the one asking." The cab pulled up at the corner just as the bus finally wheezed into view. The woman turned back once before getting in. "What's your name?" "Marcus." She nodded like she was carving it into memory. Then she was gone. And just like that, the $20 was gone too. Lily didn't cry. That was worse. She just got on the bus beside him, sat with both hands folded in her lap, and looked out the rain-streaked window like children do when they're trying very hard to be older than they are. Marcus hated himself for that look. At the pharmacy, the shutters were already halfway down. He tried explaining. He tried asking if they could float him until morning. The pharmacist gave him a sympathetic smile that somehow felt crueler than a flat no. Store policy. He thanked her anyway, because humiliation is quieter when you stay polite. By the time they got back to the apartment building, the lights in the hallway were off. The landlord had left Marcus's 2 duffel bags outside the unit door like garbage set out too early. Lily stared at them. "Are we sleeping here?" Marcus forced a smile he didn't feel. Adventure night. In the hallway? Just for a little while. She didn't say anything after that. She sat on one duffel, hugged her backpack, and leaned her head on his shoulder. An hour later, when she thought he was asleep, Marcus felt tiny fingers slide the inhaler from her pocket. He opened his eyes. Lily was counting the sprays under her breath. "One for emergencies," she whispered to herself. "One for really bad emergencies." Marcus turned his face away because suddenly the dark hallway was too small to hold what he felt. He had buried a wife, lost a job, sold his tools, lied to his daughter, and somehow that moment undid him more than all of it. By morning, his neck was stiff, his back was on fire, and the humiliation had settled deeper than hunger. He took Lily to school with a note saying her inhaler refill was coming after work. He didn't have work. He had an interview for a loading dock job across town, where the manager had already warned him they didn't hire people with baggage. By 9:30, Marcus was standing in a thrift store tie outside the school gate when he heard tires crunch on broken curb gravel behind him. A black SUV rolled to a stop. Not flashy, quiet money. The rear door opened and the woman from the bus stop stepped out. Except she wasn't the woman from the bus stop anymore. Her hair was pinned back. Her coat was tailored. Her makeup was simple, expensive, and didn't try to hide the grief still carved around her eyes. Beside her stood a driver and a silver-haired man carrying a leather folder. Marcus froze. Lily, halfway through the school doors, turned and saw him staring. The woman walked straight toward him. "I'm glad I found you." Marcus laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "What is this?" "My name is Eleanor Voss." The name hit a second later. Voss Motors. Half the repair shops in the city used their parts. Billboards, radio ads, scholarships, charity galas. Marcus had only ever seen from behind delivery vans. He looked at her, then at the SUV, then back at her. "You didn't have bus fare." "I didn't have my wallet." "That's not the same thing." "No," she said quietly. "It isn't." She nodded to the man beside her. "This is Harold Benson, my attorney, and I owe you more than $20. Marcus crossed his arms. "You can just give it back." "I didn't come to return it." That made him wary in a whole new way. Eleanor glanced toward the school entrance where Lily was still lingering. "Because of you, I made it to a board vote in time to stop the sale of Harbor House." Marcus said nothing. She took a breath, and for the first time since stepping out of the car, she looked almost fragile. "Harbor House was my son Caleb's garage. After he died, I turned it into a training shop for kids aging out of foster care, single parents learning trades, people no one wanted to hire. Last night, my board decided it wasn't profitable enough to keep. I was on my way there when my purse was stolen outside the courthouse. If I had been 10 minutes later," her voice cracked, but she held it together, "it would be gone." Marcus didn't know what to do with that, so he chose suspicion. And what does any of that have to do with me? Eleanor held his gaze. I need someone to run it. Someone who still understands what that place was built for. Not a resume, not a polished liar. A person. He almost smiled. You don't know anything about me. I know you gave your child's medicine money to a stranger because you thought her grief mattered too. That doesn't make me qualified to run a garage. No, she said. But being a mechanic for 12 years might. His face went still. He had not told her that. Eleanor answered the question before he could ask it. I had you looked into after Harold found the bus camera footage and the school badge on Lily's backpack matched your emergency contact paperwork. Former master technician, East Line Auto. Left after an incident with your supervisor. Since then, gig work, temp labor, missed rent, no arrests, no addiction, no fraud. Just a man drowning slowly. Marcus's ears burned. You had me investigated? I had 10 hours to decide who gets the keys to a dying program, she said. I used them. Harold handed Marcus a folder. Inside was an offer letter. Interim Director of Harbor House Garage. Salary, full benefits. An apartment above the garage. Lily covered under medical insurance effective immediately. Marcus stopped reading at the insurance line. His throat closed. He looked up at Eleanor like he hated her for making hope sound practical. What's the catch? She didn't flinch. You have 30 days. If you can't get the garage operating, my board will sell it without another vote. If you can, I fight for you. And if I say no? Her eyes shifted briefly toward Lily. Then I'll understand, she said. And I'll spend the rest of my life wondering why the one decent man I found at the worst moment of my life walked away. That should have felt manipulative. Maybe it was. But Marcus couldn't stop looking at the insurance line. At that exact moment, Lily came running back, missing the warning bell entirely. Dad? He blinked. You're late. I know. She turned to Eleanor. You're the lady from the rain. Eleanor knelt down, suddenly softer than Marcus had seen her. Yes. Did you save your son's garage? A shadow passed over Eleanor's face. For one night, she said. I'm trying to save it for longer. Lily looked at the folder in Marcus's hands. Is that a job? Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Lily did something then that almost broke him. She looked at Eleanor and asked, If my dad says yes, can we still get my medicine? Eleanor's answer came without pause. Yes. Marcus shut his eyes. That should have made the decision simple. It didn't. Because hope is dangerous when you've been humiliated enough times. Harbor House sat on the edge of the industrial district, a brick building with cracked windows, a faded mural of wings on one wall, and a rusted sign that still carried Caleb Voss's name under the newer logo. Inside it smelled like motor oil, burnt coffee, old metal, and abandoned plans. 3 car bays, 2 dead lifts, shelves of mislabeled parts, a classroom with mismatched chairs, an upstairs apartment that was small but clean enough to make Marcus feel ashamed of how grateful he was. And Dean Mercer. Dean wore expensive boots no mechanic would kneel in, and a smile that never reached his eyes. So this is the miracle man, he said, looking Marcus up and down. The bus stop saint. Marcus instantly disliked him. Eleanor's tone cooled by several degrees.
Dean has overseen operations here for the last year. Keeping it afloat, Dean corrected. With 3 months of unpaid vendors and half the trainees gone, Eleanor said. Dean's smile thinned. Resource challenges. Marcus looked around the shop floor. 4 trainees watched from beside a stripped-down Chevy. One girl with a shaved head and grease on her cheek. A lanky kid pretending not to listen. A heavy-set man in his 40s with anxious hands. And a sharp-eyed teenager in a hoodie who stared at Marcus like theft was less a habit than a reflex. Dean noticed him looking. That one's Diego. Brilliant with engines. Terrible with rules. Diego smirked. Nice to meet you too. Marcus set his duffel down. When do I start? Dean answered before Eleanor could. You already did. The first week felt less like a job and more like being dropped into a house fire with a wrench. The supplier accounts were frozen. The books didn't match the inventory. 2 of the 3 customer cars had been sitting untouched for weeks. The classroom computer was dead. And every time Marcus started fixing one problem, Dean slid another across his path wearing that same polished smile. The fuel order didn't go through? Must have been a clerical issue. The donor tour was moved up? Strange. I thought someone told you. The city inspection is tomorrow? Huh.
I assumed Eleanor mentioned it. He never raised his voice. Men like Dean didn't need to. They used timing like a weapon. Marcus fought back the only way he knew how, with work. He stayed late. He rebuilt the schedule. He cleaned Bay 2 himself. He taught the trainees how to listen to an engine before they ever touched a tool. Cars tell the truth, he said one night, hands black with grease. People can fake confidence. An engine can't. If something's wrong, it shakes, it knocks, it leaks. Learn to hear the truth before it breaks on you. Diego, pretending not to care, looked up fast when Marcus said that. By the second week, customer cars were moving again. By the third, the trainees were showing up early. Lily sat at a small desk upstairs doing homework while Marcus cooked boxed pasta and checked her breathing every hour like fear was a ritual. She seemed happier in the apartment. There was a door that locked, a tiny kitchen, a window that looked down into the garage where her father was becoming himself again. But one night, while Marcus was unpacking a box of Tessa's old mugs, Lily held up one with a chipped blue rim and asked the question he had avoided for months. Would Mom have liked it here? Marcus went still. He kept his back to her. Yeah. She liked when you fixed things. His hand tightened around the counter. She liked when you sang badly in the kitchen, too. That made him laugh once. Then Lily said, I don't remember her voice anymore. Marcus turned too fast, like he'd been struck. Lily looked scared of her own confession. And that was the moment that hurt most. Not because she said it, but because he had known it was coming and still wasn't ready. He sat beside her on the mattress they hadn't gotten around to framing yet. I do, he said. What did it sound like? Marcus stared at the mug in her hands. Like home when the lights were out? Lily burst into tears so suddenly it startled both of them. I tried to remember and I couldn't. He pulled her against him and felt his own chest cave. You don't have to remember everything, he whispered. You only have to remember she loved you. Downstairs, something crashed in the shop. Marcus looked toward the floor window, and for one terrible second, he thought the past had come back for him again. By the time he ran downstairs, Diego was standing beside Caleb Voss's old Mustang with a broken socket in his hand and panic in his eyes. I didn't touch it,
Diego said too quickly. Marcus looked at the hood. Someone had tampered with the engine. Not a mistake. Sabotage. The Mustang mattered because it was Eleanor's deadline.
At the end of the month, donors and board members were coming to watch Caleb's car start for the first time in 6 years. Eleanor believed if the car lived again, the garage might too. It sounded sentimental. Marcus had laughed when he first heard it. Now he understood. This wasn't about a car. It was about whether grief could build something instead of only destroying it. "Who was in here after hours?" Marcus asked. Diego hesitated. That was enough. "Tell me." His jaw flexed. "Dean." Marcus turned and marched straight toward the office. Diego grabbed his sleeve. "If you accuse him, he'll throw me out." "What?" "He said if I kept my mouth shut, my place here stays mine." Marcus stared at him. The kid's tough expression cracked just enough for the truth to show. "My mom cleans offices at night," Diego muttered. "I help with rent. If I lose this, I'm done." Marcus looked toward Dean's glass office. Dean was inside, calm as ever, speaking on the phone. Watching them. Marcus understood the trap instantly. Dean didn't just want him to fail. He wanted him angry. Publicly angry. The kind of angry that gets poor men labeled unstable and rich men labeled passionate. So Marcus did the one thing that nearly killed him. He swallowed it. That night, Eleanor found him alone in Bay 3, staring at Caleb's Mustang. "You look like you want to hit someone," she said. Marcus didn't turn. "Maybe I'm growing." A sad smile flickered across her face. Then it vanished. "There's something I didn't tell you." He faced her. She folded her arms, not out of confidence, but because grief makes people hold themselves together. "The board vote is back on," she said. 3 days from now." Marcus went cold. "You said 30. "I bought us 30. Dean convinced 2 members were spiraling faster than expected." "You knew?" "I found out an hour ago." He laughed, low and bitter. "So I moved my kid in here for a maybe." Eleanor stepped closer. "I did not offer you false hope." "No, you offered me timed hope. That's worse." She absorbed that. Then she said, very quietly, "Caleb died drunk on a road 5 miles from here. He was 22. We'd had a fight that morning. I told him if he walked out that door, I was done rescuing him." Marcus said nothing. "I said it because I was angry," she continued. "I said it because I thought there'd be another chance to unsay it." Her composure slipped for the first time. There wasn't. The garage seemed to hold its breath around them. "This place is the only thing I have ever built out of that guilt," Eleanor whispered. "So if I sound desperate, Marcus, it's because I am." He looked at her, at the woman from the bus stop, at the mother who had once been too late. And some of his anger changed shape. Not gone, just heavier. The donor event began at 6 the next evening. By 5:30, the showroom lights were on. The trainees were in clean Harbor House shirts. Lily had braided her own hair twice because she wanted it perfect. And Marcus was under the Mustang's hood, making last checks. "It's ready," he said. Eleanor nodded, but her hands were shaking. Board members arrived in polished shoes and expensive coats. Donors smiled at the mural, complimented the community energy, and asked questions that made poverty sound like a hobby program. Dean glided between them like he owned the air. Then, just as Eleanor stepped up to speak, The overhead lights cut out. The room dropped into stunned darkness. A few emergency bulbs flickered red. Someone laughed awkwardly. Dean's voice floated through the dark. "I warned Marcus the generator was unstable." Marcus spun around. "That's a lie!" When the backup lights came on, the humiliation had already started. One board member snapped, "This is exactly what I'm talking about." Another muttered, "This place is chaos." Marcus ran to the panel room, got the power back, sprinted to the bay, and turned the Mustang key in front of everyone. Click. Nothing. Again. Click. Still nothing. Silence swallowed the garage. Not polite silence, the ugly kind. Dean exhaled loudly enough to be heard. A board member took out his phone. Another whispered to a donor. Lily stood near the office door, her little shoulders rigid. Eleanor stepped toward Marcus. "What happened?" He opened the hood, hands moving fast, heart slamming. The ignition line had been cut. Cleanly. Not wear and tear. Deliberate. Before he could speak, Dean said, "Maybe we should ask where the replacement parts budget went." Marcus looked up slowly. Dean held a folder in one hand. "The numbers are ugly," he said. "Withdrawals, missing inventory, unapproved purchases. And since Marcus took over, no less." Marcus stared at him in disbelief. "You forged that." Dean gave him a pitying look that made murder briefly feel holy. "Careful." "What did you do?" Marcus stepped toward him. Two board members moved immediately, not to stop Dean, but to block Marcus. There it was. The trap. Dean lifted his chin toward the room, as if pained by what he was forced to say. "I tried to support you," he said. "But this place needs professionalism, not impulse. Charity is one thing, recklessness is another." Lily's voice cut through the room. "My dad didn't steal anything." Every head turned. Marcus felt his insides tear. Lily stood trembling, fists clenched at her sides. Dean smiled at her the way cowards smile at children when adults are watching. "No one said he did, sweetheart." "You did." A donor looked uncomfortable. A board member looked annoyed. That was somehow worse. Marcus saw the exact second Lily realized that telling the truth was not the same as being believed. It was the same look he'd seen on her face in the bus shelter. Adults, math, loss. Dean tucked the folder under his arm. "I think this event is over." And just like that, the room began choosing him. Not because he was right, because he was safer, cleaner, more expensive. Marcus ripped off his Harbor House badge and dropped it on the floor. "Happy now?" Dean didn't answer. He didn't need to. That night, Marcus packed in silence. Lily sat on the mattress, hugging her knees. "Are we leaving?" He shoved shirts into a duffel too hard. "Yeah." "Where?" "I don't know yet." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You shouldn't have given her the 20. The words landed like glass. Marcus stopped moving. Lily immediately looked horrified, like she wanted to take them back before the air heard them. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" "No," Marcus said, voice breaking. "You did." He sat down hard on the edge of the bed. For a moment he looked less like a father than a man who had run out of places to hide his failure. Lily slid off the mattress and stood in front of him. "I know you were trying to be good." He laughed without humor. Trying doesn't count much lately.
It does to me.
He looked up. Children do this terrible thing sometimes. They forgive you before you've earned it. A knock came at the apartment door. Marcus wiped his face fast and opened it, ready for more damage. It was Diego. The kid's hoodie was soaked through. His lip was split. And in his shaking hand was a small metal part wrapped in a shop rag. The Mustang's ignition relay. Marcus went still. Where did you get that? Diego's eyes filled, though he fought it.
Dean made me hide it, he said. He said if I didn't, he'd call immigration on my mom. He knows a guy who can make problems.
Marcus felt the room tilt.
There's more,
Diego said.
He's been selling donated parts out the back and blaming losses on the program. I got pictures. I didn't know what to do.
He pulled out a cheap phone with cracked glass. Photos. Invoices. Cash pickups. Dean loading boxes into a private truck. Marcus looked up sharply. Why tell me now? Diego's face twisted with shame. Because your little girl looked at me tonight, like she still thought adults could do the right thing. From the hallway, Lily had heard everything. Marcus saw her standing there barefoot, eyes red but steady. He looked at Diego, at the relay, at the phone, at the choice. Run and survive, or stay and fight men built to crush people like him. At 9 the next morning, the board gathered in Harbor House's conference room to finalize the sale. Developers were already downstairs measuring wall spans for demolition. Marcus wasn't invited, so he walked in anyway. Harold tried to stop him at the door. Then he saw Diego behind him and Lily holding Marcus's hand with fierce little fingers, and something in the old lawyer's face shifted. "Let him speak," Eleanor said. Dean leaned back in his chair, calm as ever. "This should be quick." Marcus laid the ignition relay on the table, then Diego's phone, then a printed stack of invoices Harold had verified in the last hour. Nobody spoke. Dean's smile disappeared by degrees. "What is this?" one board member asked. "The truth," Marcus said. His voice shook at first, then steadied. Dean cut the line in Caleb's car. Dean hid the part. Dean sold donated inventory and buried it in false loss reports. And when the numbers started bleeding, he needed a body to pin it on. So he picked the broke guy, the widower, the single dad, the one everybody could believe was desperate enough. Dean finally snapped. "You think a teenager and a failed mechanic can walk in here and—" "Failed?" Marcus stepped closer. "Yeah, I failed. I failed to save my wife from a fever that got worse while I was working overtime because rent was due. I failed to hear my daughter crying some nights because I was too busy pretending I was still a man she could rely on. You don't get to use that word like I haven't lived inside it." The room went dead still. Dean stood. "This is emotional theater." Marcus laughed, and this time there was fire in it. "No. Emotional theater was you standing under donor lights pretending concern while you gutted a dead boy's legacy for parts." Harold began handing documents to the board. One member flipped through them, face draining. Another said, "These account numbers are yours, Dean." Dean turned to Eleanor. "You're really going to believe this? Him?" Eleanor rose slowly from her chair. When she spoke, her voice was so controlled it made everyone listen harder. "No," she said. "I'm going to believe the evidence. And after that,
I'm going to believe the man who gave away his last $20 when nobody was watching. Dean looked around the room for someone to save him. No one did.
That was the beautiful part. Men like him build their power on the assumption that everyone loves comfort more than truth. Until one day, truth becomes too expensive to ignore. Security escorted Dean out. This time, the room watched him. Really watched him. No polished smile, no perfect posture. Just a cornered man with sweat darkening his collar and rage chewing through his composure. Public humiliation doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with silence. Sometimes it comes with the exact faces that once nodded along, now refusing to meet your eyes. When the door shut behind him, Marcus finally exhaled. He thought it was over. It wasn't. Because Eleanor was still standing. And she was looking at him the way people look at doors they're afraid to open and afraid not to. "The sale is canceled," she said. "Harbor House stays." Relief slammed through the room. Diego actually sat down from the force of it. Lily squeezed Marcus's hand so hard it hurt. Then Eleanor added, "And effective immediately, I am dissolving the current board's operational authority." A few people protested. She kept talking. "Harbor House will become an independent trust under new leadership." Now everyone was quiet again. Eleanor walked around the table and stopped in front of Marcus. "You asked me the catch when I offered you this job." Marcus said nothing. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "There isn't one anymore." Harold handed her a new folder. She placed it in Marcus's hands. Not an offer letter, a partnership agreement. 5-year stewardship, profit sharing, permanent housing above the garage with an option to purchase at $1 after completion of term. Full medical coverage. Educational fund for Lily. Apprenticeship protections for every trainee currently enrolled. Marcus stared at the pages. "I can't take this." "Yes," Eleanor said. "You can." "Why?" Her answer came out like a confession. "Because when you gave me that $20, you reminded me of something I thought died with my son. That decency still exists without audience, without cameras, without leverage. I built Harbor House because I couldn't save Caleb. But maybe this place was never supposed to be about my guilt." She glanced at Lily, then Diego, then the shop floor beyond the glass. Maybe it was supposed to belong to people who still know how to choose each other. Marcus's vision blurred. He hated crying in front of rooms full of people. He hated needing anything. He hated how close he had come to walking away. Lily tugged his sleeve. "Dad," she whispered, smiling through tears. "Say yes before something explodes again." The room laughed. Real laughter this time. The kind that comes after too much strain. Marcus let out a breath that sounded half broken, half reborn. Then he signed. 3 months later, Harbor House was full. All bays running. A wait list for apprentices. A mural repainted by the trainees with Caleb's name restored in bright white letters and new names surrounding it. Every person who got a second start there. Diego taught engine diagnostics on Thursdays. The heavyset man with anxious hands became the best paint specialist in the shop. The girl with the shaved head got her certification and stopped flinching when people praised her. Lily had a room with yellow curtains she picked herself, an inhaler in every bag she owned, and a habit of ringing the service bell downstairs like she ran the place. Maybe she did. And some nights, after the customers were gone and the tools were quiet, Marcus would stand in the center of the garage with grease on his hands and grief still living somewhere in his chest, but no longer as a tomb. More like an engine, still heavy, still loud, still capable of carrying something forward. One evening, Eleanor stopped by unannounced. No driver, no attorney, just her. She found Marcus closing Bay 2. "You were right," she said. He frowned. "About what?" She looked around the garage, at the lights, the trainees, the life in it. "The last thing someone leaves behind doesn't have to become a grave." Marcus glanced up toward the apartment window where Lily's silhouette moved behind the curtains. "No," he said softly. "If you're lucky, it becomes a reason." Eleanor smiled, and for the first time since the bus stop, it reached her eyes. When she left, Marcus locked the garage, turned off the lights, and stood in the dark for a second longer than necessary. Not because he was afraid anymore, because he knew exactly how close he had come to losing all of this. A hallway floor, a coughing child, a folded $20 bill. That was the distance between ruin and rescue. And maybe that's why the story hits so hard. Because life doesn't always change when you're strong. Sometimes it changes when you're broken and choose kindness anyway. Sometimes the hand that saves your future is the one you open while you're still losing everything.